This is part 2 of the content lectures for Module 1. And in this lecture, we're going to be talking about geography and its themes, as well as the general tools of geography. Now, if we look at this, what we can really say in terms of geography, I guess the easiest way that I can say it, is that geography, from the textbook standpoint, deals with the concepts of region, human and physical geography, thematic and regional studies, areal differentiation, areal integration, and scale of study. These are all concepts, and again, we want to differentiate concepts from themes, and we'll go through these different ideas. But when we talk about a region, what I really mean there is simply a region is a definable area on Earth's surface. And that region may be based on physical properties, cultural properties, human, economic activities, infrastructural activities, or extents. And so when we talk about that, regions are really something that we have to first define. Regions of what? Now, we're also going to see that as we move through the semester, we're going to be talking about human geography, and that is the distribution of human phenomena, and then physical geography, and that is the distribution and processes that lead to those things that are not necessarily human. The other terms that I want you to understand the distinction between is thematic geographies or studies and regional studies. When we talk about thematic studies, that means we may be asking simply the question of, for example, Judaism in the world. In other words, what is the distribution of Judaism both over time and across space, and what processes lead and have led to that distribution of that world religion? Now, that's a theme. It's a single theme, and we look at all aspects of the theme. Conversely, we can look at regional studies, in which we might say we want to know everything about the geography of Cuba. And that goes everything from its physical geography, its geomorphology, its fluvial systems, its climate, and its culture, its economics, its integration into the global economy. So, those are ideas of thematic versus regional studies. We can also talk about areal differentiation versus areal integration. Areal differentiation means that we are asking the question about what makes two areas very, very different. What is the break or divide between areas? At the same time, we can also ask about integration. That is, what things are common, what things exist between areas or within areas that are integrated. Of course, an important issue with all the things we've just said is the question of scale. If I look at the geography of a neighborhood or a block, we may see both integration and differentiation very differently than we would see if we looked at it at a state or national level. So we're always going to be interested as geographers in terms of the scale of our study. All right, so let's get back to this idea of region. I want to talk a little bit more about this. We talk about region in a number of different ways. In this class, what we're going to be seeing is the idea of regions as they kind of are outlined on this map. And often this is really central to the cultural, economic, political, linguistic characteristics of the region. Of course, physical barriers do come into play, but we'll see that human beings and their region is often much more a function of how we perceive than any physical realities. Now, here's a great example of that. If you look at this image, what you'll notice in the southern half is that you see something on the landscape that is very, very geometric. In fact, these are formal areas of agriculture that are very well delineated and, in fact, are very well maintained. And then all of a sudden, halfway up this satellite image, that stops. Now, what's going on there? There's certainly nothing in the physical landscape that would require that to occur. In fact, there's many aspects that go right across that line that you can virtually see there. Well, the easy answer is that's the divide between a natural area that's on the Canadian side of the border and in the United States a very active agriculture and ranching area. So in fact, a political boundary that does not exist in any physical sense in space produced a very dramatic change in land use. So when we think about regions, I want you to think about them in a couple different ways. Oftentimes, what we will do is we will talk about regions as formal, functional, or vernacular. Now, all of those come together in some respects to form what we would call the cultural landscape, and that is, in a sense, the meaning in place. So, first of all, formal regions are those that we can, in a sense, say exist politically or geopolitically. These are regions that we can say are generally accepted and well understood in terms of their boundaries. Conversely, we can have functional regions. And when we talk about functional regions, these are areas that are understood to serve as a function of something that we are interested in. And so, for example, what you see here are the functional regions of fandom. That is, we can look at Packer country or the Steeler nation. And in fact, we can see that for the Packers or for the Steelers, this functional region is defined by the area where the majority of Facebook people that identify with a team exist. So in fact, we use something here to define a region by account. It is the number of people that define themselves as majority Steelers fans versus Bears fans versus Colts fans. Functional region is based on a specific function. What is the area associated with something? Now, what we can also say, though, is that those areas, and again, you notice we're down there on the Strip District in Pittsburgh here, and you see three rivers coming together there in the point, and there's Heinz Field. We can see that those aspects of the cultural landscape are associated with both the formal region of Pittsburgh, the city boundaries, but also this functional region, that is the Steelers, what they are associated with in terms of their fan association. And then we could also say kind of that vernacular region, vernacular region is just a term that we have a loose association with. Steelers country, Packers country, the Midwest. None of those things have hard boundaries, nor can we use a quantitative measure as we could in a functional region, but they're something we understand. Now, once we get away from region, what I want to also talk about today is a little bit of the geographer's toolboxes. And again, briefly, we're going to simply go through the idea of the map, which we're going to use a lot in this course, and then some newer technology, geographic information systems, GIS, global positioning systems, GPS, and then, of course, remote sensing. So much of this is going to come right out of the text. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but I want you to make sure you understand the key ideas. First of all, I expect you to know latitude and longitude and the concept of map scale. That is the relationship between real world distance and map distance. And then you will read a little bit about map projection. And as we go through the semester, I'll point out maps that distort. So again, please remember that we're interested here in longitude measuring east or west of the prime meridian and latitude measuring north or south of the equator. Those are the prime reference lines for each of those systems. Map projections are, again, the way of getting a spherical three-dimensional object into a flat form. And please note in both cases that there is distortion. It's the most important idea, is to understand how that distortion occurs and where it occurs. Now, we can also talk about scale. You'll notice in this map, we're looking at Grove City. That happens to be where I am right now. And we can, in fact, see down to in a sense right here, this says that this unit is equal to 1,000 feet in the real world. So that's the map scale. It's a very, very, what we would consider a large scale map, covers a relatively small area. Now, we can integrate that with satellite imagery, and in fact, that's a form of remote sensing. Bringing all of this information together, though, is a form of geographic information system. That is something that allows us to do spatial analysis. Remote sensing, though, doesn't necessarily, nor does GIS, have to simply deal with what we can see. In this case, we're looking at the density of plastics in the oceans based on modeling. And so here we have a form of GIS, spatial analysis, integrating with a form of remote sensing. This happens to be using, I believe, the Aqua satellite, and it comes together to give us information that we really can't see any other way. All right, that is the end of our second lecture. We'll pick this up next time.